I think as women, we don't ask enough. We don't ask each other enough for help, or we don't ask each other to invest in each other's success.
Welcome to the Best Branding Podcast for Women. My name is Kirande and I'm so excited to introduce you to Katryna Dow. There are many unsung heroes that have made society a safer place. Anna Connolly invented the fire escape and Marie van Britten Brown invented CCTV to increase her own safety and that of her neighborhood. And let's not forget Hollywood actress Hedy Lamarr, who invented a secret communication system that was used in the Second World War that actually paved the way for the invention of Wi-Fi and GPS. Today's guest, Katryna Dow, could have easily continued her comfortable and secure life back in Australia, but instead she saw how society was developing and the growing need for digital safety tools. And that was the start of her company. In my talk with Katryna, we dive into how to get recognized as a tech expert while being a woman without a tech background, and also how to sell products or services to businesses, and the importance of human relations. I hope you find this talk as inspirational as I did making it.
When we got to know each other, you mentioned that you started your career in a regular corporate way in business, finance, and you work yourself up to C-level. And then you watched a science fiction film and that changed everything. What's that story?
Correct. I've always been a bit of a mad sci-fi fan. About 20 years ago, I saw the film Minority Report. I don't know if you remember it, with Tom Cruise.
Yes.
And it was about this completely data-driven society where the exchange of data was so pervasive that even our thoughts could be read. So the premise of the film is if you were even thinking about to do something, that your thoughts would be monitored. I came out of that film and I remember looking up to the sky thinking, oh my goodness, if that's the future, if that's what a data-driven world looks like, and this is a world that young people would be born into, then where would their digital agency, where would their ability to control what's happening in their life, where would that come from? And that bothered me for about a decade. And then finally, about 10 years ago, I woke up and said, okay, I'm going to do something about it and I'm going to build a company.
Yes, and then you started Meeco. Would you mind explaining it in lay terms?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what will happen, particularly for listeners here in Europe, that over the next 2 years, a lot of what we do will become better explained because the EU has already passed some regulation and it will be finalized after summer to allow everyone in the EU to have the right to have a digital identity. So basically a digital wallet in the same way that we all understand a payments wallet, that we may be using on our Apple device or our Google device. But the European Union really wants all European citizens to have a secure way to be able to prove who they are online. And our company has been anticipating for almost a decade the need for you and I to be able to access, control, and exchange our personal data, our digital identity, and also our digital assets as we're living more and more in the physical world and the metaverse. So in simple terms, our company has an API platform and we build all of the technology and the cybersecurity and the cryptography under the bonnet that would allow those front-end applications to run. So you might find our technology embedded in the banking app, which will allow you to use and exchange your data in a very secure way.
You didn't have a background in tech or cybersecurity. How did you manage to become a reliable and credible player?
I'd always been working alongside technology right from the start of my career. I had been in roles where technology was a really important part of how an organization ran, whether or not it was around operations or innovation. So I was tech literate in terms of understanding the value that technology platforms could bring to an enterprise. So I think that certainly helped because it meant that I had some understanding. For a year or two before I started the company, I spent a lot of time deep diving, reading everything that I could. There was a lot of really interesting things around 2011, 2012, written by the World Economic Forum, written by BCG, commissioned by the European Commission to say, what does the digital future look like? What does digital society in Europe look like? So just read everything. And at the same time, I had come from an innovation background and strategy. I imagined a product. And then I was really lucky. I found a very small team of developers and hired them to translate that concept into code. And that was really the beginning. And I guess the credibility came from a deep understanding of the problem we were solving, the opportunities, but also I was able to bring from my career experience in terms of legal and governance and commercial models. What makes our technology interesting is that we imagine how it might be embedded in an organization, but we also understand how it enforces your digital rights and also what are the commercial outcomes that would need to be enabled. So I think it was the fusion of all of those things that helped.
I see that you sometimes post on LinkedIn. That's how I found you. And sometimes a bit on X or Twitter. However, I see more footage of you on stage organized by other organizations. Is that the main way you brand your company?
I used to be very active on Twitter, but I have to say with the changes to Twitter over the last year or so, I really feel that audience and engagement has changed a lot. So I think I'm very lucky that part of my role is really an ambassador for us as a company, which means speaking at a lot of international events all around the world. And I'm really lucky that a lot of the time those events are captured and then the creators of those events post them online. So I think in terms of a decade of watching the growth of our company, us staying very focused on our North Star of what we want to achieve, which is equity and participation in digital society for everyone. I'm really lucky that there is a history of that has been caught through various talks. And I would say that's probably the most effective because it's generally an audience that is already interested in the subject or looking for a solution. So it's a specific audience that we're talking to. However, I do think if I had another 24 hours in every day, I would try and be more active on certainly on LinkedIn. If I had more time, I would write. I love writing. I just don't have time, but I would do a lot more blog posts and those kinds of things if I had the time.
What would you write about then should you have an extra 24 hours in the day? What kind of content would you post on LinkedIn and who would you like to reach with that content?
You know, I think your question of explaining what we do in everyday terms, I would like particularly to try and communicate to women and parents just how much a child's life in the digital age is going to be impacted by how we've evolved, how social media platforms have evolved, the way our data is actually harvested, our identity is subject with AI to increasing fraud, and that a child born today will not have the ability to operate outside of the digital world. From the minute they're born, their birth is probably recorded digitally at a hospital. Next, they're enrolled at school. Next, they're being filmed on stage. They probably, on their first holiday, already have a frequent flyer account. And so when we think of what it means for a child today, I would love to be able to communicate how important it is to help create a safe space for children while they're developing. And then for parents to understand that the child's digital identity and their data is an asset that will be an important part of how they will participate in society over the course of their life. So if I had a magic 24 hours a day, I would be looking at what does that mean? What does that look like? And how can we work on a better digital society for this next generation?
We should just start a podcast. It sounds like very necessary content.
So we need to be doing better as a society. And I think, first of all, not blaming or shaming, but just helping parents understand, where do you start? What does good digital parenting look like?
I remembered that you said you were giving a lot of keynote speeches and that was your main branding tool, actually. And yet, after decades of speaking on stage, you said, I still get nervous.
It's really true. I still wake up on some days, even today, I still get butterflies. I used to really worry about it because I used to think, wow, when will this stop? When will I just be so confident that I wake up in the morning and if I have to go on stage, I'm just superwoman? It hasn't happened yet. And I think nowadays, when I have to do something and I feel that rush of nerve, I kind of just go, okay, it'll all be okay. You know what you want to communicate. You just have to trust that, go out there and do it. And just accept those butterflies are going to be there until I start speaking.
And then they fade away.
Usually when you're connecting with an audience or you're talking about something that you really care about, or you're talking about something that is important, usually the subject matter sort of clicks into place, or that connection, or you look out into the audience and somebody smiles, or you get a sense that you're off and running, and I find it fades.
I love that you mentioned now twice the word connection, and it's human, social, emotional connection that you were referring to. I notice that a lot of people, when they think about selling B2B, selling your product to a business, that this whole emotional part is not relevant. But in the end, people do business with people.
And as I get older, I think that human connection and that chemistry is really critical, particularly with what we do, because the foundation of our company is trust. And so I think it's very difficult to build trust in any relationship, B2B, B2C, in a family, in a friendship. As you say, people do business with people that they want to. If there's a choice between one and two, people will gravitate to where they find that connection and that chemistry. And I think for us, even though our company has been operating for a decade, we're still right at the beginning of this digital transformation. And so for me at this stage of my life, I really want to be focused on people that are also interested in building this change, that are motivated by what might be better as a financial institution to give better security to your customers, or for a government to make sure that citizens have their digital protections in the way they have physical protection. I am always looking for leaders that have a strategy, that care about these things, but also are on a bit of a mission to see that can be a differentiator for their customers, their patients, their students, their employees. And I think that's where the connection becomes really important.
Looking back at how you've built the brand, which activities gained a lot of success in one way or another? Which ones were actually, I wish I'd spent my time or energy on something else?
You know what? We could have a whole podcast on my mistakes, all the things I've learned along the way, things I warned you not to do. So I think on a positive note, becoming a subject matter expert, like doing a lot of research, understanding the problem, and becoming a voice with evidence around solution. That was really about building credibility. I've had the opportunity to do that over a decade by being involved in many different communities or standards groups or discussions around the way this whole sector will evolve. I think positively engaging with others, and I think it's always a great philosophy to give and not really expect anything back. But my experience is, if you invest that time with people, it always comes back in some way in the future. with my crystal ball, I think we started the company possibly too early, because I really see that shift is happening now. However, if we hadn't, we wouldn't have credibility or the track record or the brand. And, the focus for me of our brand is really that you see Meeco and you understand that it is around privacy by design, security by design, and digital trust. But I also feel like many of the failed experiment or the learning has actually helped us understand this sector better, and certainly understand how at the end of the day we need to solve everyday problems for everyday people. And I think that only comes through sort of a practical way of learning. So Grande, I would like to ask you something in reverse, and that is, you're really focusing now on personal branding, and we recognize that getting cut through in any digital channel is just so challenging now. And a lot of what people see is based on whether it's boosted by the algorithm. Where do you suggest, if somebody wants to start an online presence, where do you think is a good place for them to start?
That's a very good question. I think online should support what you do offline. We already mentioned connection. The real connections happen in real life, or at least in simultaneous conversations like we're having right now. So try and go out there, meet real people. And if you get the opportunity to speak on stage, do that. Make sure someone records it and then share it. Maybe they will share it, but you can also reshare it, and then you don't have to do the works. LinkedIn in B2B settings definitely is the most valuable platform. But maybe if your target market really is on X, like who are you trying to reach, then you have to go to X. The downside of most platforms is that whatever you put on there, it doesn't help your SEO, your search engine optimization, or your findability online. Whereas when you post a video on YouTube, which is part of Google, the search engines do pick that up. So the longevity of that content is much higher and much more interesting. So main focus offline, and then support that so that you create a long tail online. Thank you for being on my podcast. I don't think there was a clear gain for you to invest this half an hour in my project. But should someone of your target market listen, would that be, and how can they reach you?
So first of all, I think there was a big motivation. You reached out to me and you asked. I think as women, we don't ask enough. We don't ask each other enough for help, or we don't ask each other to invest in each other's success. So the motivation was you reached out and you asked. I also thought what you're trying to do is really wonderful. The reality is it's still really challenging for women to navigate career and family and education and interests and investing in themselves as a member of their community or as a professional. So I still think we need help, encouragement, and support. And also, women are so often the decision makers in the family around how everyday spending and choices are made, or supervising children. And there's just not enough products and services around technology that are designed understanding women will make those choices. So if there is some small way of inspiring anyone listening today to get involved in digital transformation, in building products, in security, in STEM, in science, we need to. And that leads into to reach out. We're very focused on embedding our technology inside enterprises where trust and a fiduciary duty or custodianship is important. That's typically financial institutions, it could be government, it could be telco, it could be a multinational with a very large employee base. If you think of anyone where the ability to allow their customer or their citizen to have access, control, and secure ways of exchanging their data, then it would be a delight to talk to anyone that may be working on strategies for that, digital transformation, or anyone that's just really interested in the challenge of our generation. How do we make a safe and equitable digital economy for the next generation?
And with those words, I wanted to end this third episode of the Best Branding Podcast for Women. Katryna and I actually talked for a lot longer, including more about responsible digital parenting. If you're curious about that part, go to my website, kirande.com or bestbrandingpodcastforwomen.com, where you can sign up for free for my online library. And there you can find extra content and also tools to help you brand your business or your service better. If you're still watching, then please follow, like and subscribe. It will be greatly appreciated. And you can always find me on LinkedIn. My name is Kirande and I hope to hear from you. I wish you a lovely rest of the day. Bye!